Alden and Maine's Kalyeserye child, the sweet story behind the question. Fans still ask. What if the little family fans fell in love with on television was never just about the characters, but about the beautiful imagination of millions of viewers who wanted Alden and Maine's story to last forever? For AlDub fans, Kalyeserye was never an ordinary television storyline. It was a world filled with laughter, killing, unexpected twists, and unforgettable characters. And at the centre of it all were Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza, whose on-screen chemistry made fans dream about what their story could look like beyond the television screen. One question, however, has continued to catch the attention of curious fans. Was Alden and Maine's child in Kalyeserye real in real life? The answer requires separating the magical world of television from the real lives of the two stars. A child born from the AlDub story. During the height of the AlDub phenomenon, Alden and Maine's characters became the centre of an extended fictional storyline. Their romance developed through the popular Kalyeserye segments of Eat Bulaga, where comedy, romance, and dramatic storytelling were blended together. As the story continued to evolve, fans became deeply attached to the fictional family surrounding the pair. For viewers who had spent months watching Alden and Maine's characters fall in love, the idea of seeing them as a family naturally felt incredibly sweet. It was the kind of storyline that made fans imagine, what would their life look like if this love story continued? And television gave them a playful answer. But was the child really theirs? No. The child portrayed within the Kalyeserye storyline was part of the fictional world created for the show. It was not a real-life child of Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza. That distinction is important because the extraordinary popularity of AlDub sometimes made the fictional relationship feel incredibly real to viewers. Fans weren't simply watching actors. They were emotionally invested in characters they had followed day after day. That emotional connection could make fictional moments feel surprisingly personal. Why did fans believe it so easily? Because Alden and Maine had something that television producers can spend years trying to create: natural chemistry. Their reactions, expressions, playful moments, and comedic timing made viewers feel as if they were watching two people who genuinely enjoyed being around each other. And because Kalyeserye unfolded in a unique, almost improvised style, fans could easily become immersed in the story. There wasn't always the feeling of watching a traditional scripted drama. Instead, it felt spontaneous, it felt alive, and that made every new development more exciting. The sweetest part was the fans' imagination. Perhaps the most beautiful thing about the story wasn't whether Alden and Maine actually had a child. It was the fact that fans cared enough to imagine an entire future for them. They imagined weddings, they imagined a family, they imagined Alden as a father and Maine as a mother. They imagined what their children might look like. They imagined a happy ending. And for a while, Kalyeserye allowed them to experience that fantasy through television. That's what great entertainment can do. It can make you believe in a possibility, even when you know it's only a story. Alden and Maine were more than just a pairing. The AlDub phenomenon became much bigger than a romantic storyline. Alden Richards was already an established actor and performer, while Maine Mendoza became one of the biggest breakout stars of the period. Together, they created a cultural moment that fans still remember. The characters they played became so beloved that even years later, people continue to revisit old clips and ask questions about the story. And that tells us something important. Some television romances don't really end when the show ends. They remain in people's memories. The what if still makes fans smile. Maybe that's why the question about their fictional child continues to circulate. It represents something bigger than a simple piece of trivia. It represents the what if. What if Alden and Maine had continued their fictional family story? What if AlDub had remained together on television for many more years? What if viewers had gotten to see their characters grow old together? Those questions don't necessarily mean fans don't understand reality. Sometimes, people simply enjoy returning to a story that made them happy, and AlDub certainly made millions of people happy. Have fiction and reality are two different stories. The real-life Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza eventually followed their own paths. Their careers continued to develop separately, and their personal lives moved forward in ways that were different from the fictional world of Kalyeserye. That's completely normal. Actors can create a beautiful love story on screen without that story becoming their real-life future. And perhaps that's one of the reasons AlDub remains special. The magic belonged to the story, the memories belonged to the fans, and Alden and Maine were the two people who brought that magic to life. Why fans still talk about it? Years later, fans can still look back at those moments and smile. They remember the excitement, they remember the jokes, they remember the waiting, they remember the famous Tamang Panahon, and they remember a television love story that became much bigger than anyone expected. So was the child from Kalyeserye actually Alden and Maine's child in real life? No, it was part of the fictional story. But the feelings the storyline created among fans, those were very real. And perhaps that's the sweetest part of all, because sometimes a story doesn't need to become reality to become unforgettable. Alden and Maine gave fans a fictional family to love, and years later, that little piece of television magic is still making people smile.